Hello everyone. As you might know, in 3.24.2 we can have 4 weapon groups now, which is very nice, but we only have one trigger. For example, I can have one weapon group with only energy guns, one weapon group with only ballistic guns, one weapon group with all guns, and one weapon group with only 2 energy guns. You can change between weapon groups. You have to set a hotkey for this, it's in menu. Let's start with first weapon group, only energy guns. Second weapon group, only ballistic guns. Third weapon group, all guns. And fourth weapon groups, only 2 energy guns. Do you want to hear now the bad news? We now have only one trigger. Only one trigger. Regardless if you use joystick, if you use mouse, second trigger is assumed in view, or if you use a controller. You can switch between weapon groups and then you can fire, but this is a lot slower than having 2 triggers. Also, many joysticks have a double trigger. Press trigger halfway, you fire weapon group 1, press trigger full, you fire weapon group 1 and 2 at the same time. This is now gone in 3.24.2. There are quite a lot of threads about this on Spectrum, for example from Soul Paradigm. 3.24.2 weapon grouping needs proper keybinds. Or this one from Onatech. Star Citizen UI team, bow down to your fire group UI daddy. 2 triggers, keyboard, mouse and controller usable. This is a little dangerous. I think you have 3 weapon groups and you can assign triggers to each of those weapon groups, trigger 1 or trigger 2. The reason for this video is we have no reply from Yogi.
There are bindings to switch to specific weapon groups, but not for firing them at the same. I'll see if we can add something like set and fire weapon group or fire them directly. Can't promise it yet due to the other stuff happening, but I'll put it in the backlog. Edit, adjusted the wording, just to avoid misunderstandings and to compensate for the bit of theory crafting that popped up. Yes, I use dual sticks including dual stage triggers. Yes, I understand your feedback. There is no need to be frustrated about the topic or expand it into the other regions of the game. Remember you're playing an unfinished build and that the feedback you give has an effect on our next priorities. We'll talk internally about this on Monday, and then we'll see what happens.
I find this very disturbing. Yogi pretends he plays with dual joysticks and dual triggers, and he didn't see this coming, but there's more.
The decision to go for a single fire button was made quite a while ago. The main driver here is that we want to get a closer input parity between FPS, turret and ship controls to make entry into the game easier for new players and also reserve right mouse button for precision targeting. You might argue it's useless right now, but it will be pretty important for the full engineering gameplay pass in 4.0. Thus one of the goals is to slowly move to have weapon switching to the mouse wheel, although that doesn't work in FPS yet at the moment. Use precision targeting. Zoom on right mouse button and apply the same approach for ship and turrets. That basically means that by default only one fire button is available, thus to change default bindings and single fire control. But, as I said, that's the default. I am not against adding additional buttons, functions to quickly switch and fire at the same time.
Having 4 weapon groups in 3.24.2 is of course very nice. Having only one trigger is not. For example, if a ship has weapons with different projectile speeds, you get different pips for different guns. Guns need more or less lead, which is important for deflection shooting. Also, a lot of joysticks have double triggers. Press the trigger halfway, fire only weapon group 1, fully press the trigger, fire both weapon groups. And now it looks like this was intentional. No one at CRG thought this might be a bad idea to have only one trigger. I don't even see this change in 3.24.2 as making the game ready for consoles, because console games can have more than one trigger too. Even in Star Citizen, an Xbox controller had 2 triggers before 3.24.2. And I find this very telling to make entry into the game easier for new players. Yes, Star Citizen is getting more and more watered down. What happened to the best damn space game ever, Chris? In addition, CRT could make the game way more interesting for new players if there wouldn't be so many tedious time sinks, so many boring and repetitive missions. Chris, I don't think this will work. I still love the idea of Star Citizen. I still want Star Citizen to become a fantastic game and a huge success, but I'm losing more and more hope. This happens when people are working on a game who never worked on any game before, who don't even play Star Citizen, and are only going for a cool cinematic look. Chris, you can have a nice looking UI that is still functional, still usable. However, if your only goal is a cinematic look, you end up with a movie UI like in Iron Man that looks very good on screen, but has no function and is very user unfriendly. And if I read statements from CRT employees like, the decision to go for a single button was made quite a while ago. Why? Who thought this is a good idea? Regardless if 1, 2, 3, 4 triggers are needed, it's always a good idea to give players options. Don't take options away if you don't understand what players are actually doing with those options. Thanks for watching and see you next time. Bye. Auf Wiedersehen. Can you make it to the main elevator? Okay, let's try the big elevator. Hey, you're still here. You might want to join me on Twitter. My Twitter account is Camural_SC.